And welcome to the Go Earn It podcast, episode number 14. Looking forward to this one. I think it's one of the craziest stories in college wrestling history. We are joined by Anthony Cassar, Ant the Champ, 2019 Big Ten champion, 2019 NCAA champion, now 2-0 in mixed martial arts as a pro. Anthony, it is great to have you here. How are you?
Great to be here, Shane. Always enjoy talking to you. So thanks for having me.
Anthony, about 15 minutes ago before I came on, I'm outside and my neighbor is in 6th grade, I believe he is. And he plays basketball all the time. He's always out there. And one of my favorite things that I've kind of adapted is a great phrase is passion before excellence. You've got to be passionate about something before you can become excellent at it. And what I like about this kid is he's out there all the time by himself. His dad is an assistant basketball coach at Oshkosh North High School, which is where Tyrese Halliburton played high school basketball. But he's got a passion for it. It's cold outside. He's out there. His dad's not home. He's out there all the time by himself. So I love that passion before excellence. What is something that resonates with you? What's one of your favorite sayings? What motivates you?
Yeah, when you were saying that, the word grit comes to mind. That's something that I always felt like I was blessed with, and the definition that I'm aware of is passion and perseverance for a long-term goal. And that's what I feel like was my greatest blessing throughout high school and college is I had passion and perseverance for a goal that seemed impossible, but I stuck with it, and eventually I was able to achieve it. So grit is my number one.
What is something that your parents really did a good job at? Now you're upper 20s where you can look back at it and say, man, this moment, that moment, the way they handled this, the way they handled that, they clearly did something right in developing you and your grit.
I appreciate that. I would say faith was always a big part of our lives. And so they were always stressing the significance of moral character and just raising good people. And so, and they showed by example their hard work and their faith and their discipline and the way that they worked to support, 7 kids. And so it was less about them being there for every little thing. They couldn't drive us to wrestling matches. I couldn't go to state tournaments on the weekend, but what they showed and what they preached is what I took the most from them. And I want to always make them proud. So that was the most gratifying thing I would say is seeing them happy after you achieve a goal.
You are one of 7?
One of 7. Yeah.
Where do you fit in that mix?
I'm number 5.
What is it like being one of 7?
I loved it. I have 3 brothers, 3 sisters. So it was always crazy growing up. Always had someone to hang out with, always had someone to beat up or get beat up by. And so it's awesome. I want to have a big family as well.
What is something in this sport, in wrestling, or you could speak to MMA, combat sports, both of those. What is something you are really passionate about within wrestling or within MMA, like an aspect of those two things?
I just like that it brings out the best version of myself. Like both of the styles of combat, they challenge me to my core, mind, body, and spirit. And so what I appreciate about them the most is I improve as a person because of them. And, throughout the 5 years in college, yeah, I ended up achieving my goal, but that 5 years of growth as a man and the struggles and trials and tribulations that pulled out and forced me to grow is what I appreciate the most of it. It's not the most common answer, but as I'm growing older, that's what I appreciate the most.
Your high school story, freshman, sophomore, junior year, you do not make the state tournament. And then, of course, you win it as a senior. But after those 3 years, what kept you going? What kept you motivated? And what made you think that you could win a state title as a senior?
Yeah, so I wasn't, I was around the sport a lot growing up, but I wasn't fully committed to it. I didn't have the best training program or set up. And so I remember I started really committing myself to it after sophomore year of high school. And I saw tremendous gains. And it just clicked in my head like, hey, if I'm getting that much better by the amount of work that I'm putting in now, imagine if I went 110% into this thing, I could be great. And so I switched that flip in my head after walking off the mat my junior season and just said, who cares? I'm going to go win it. And ended up doing that the following year.
What was it like to stand on the podium as a state champion? And looking back, what was the most critical for you in that process in achieving the championship?
It was surreal. I felt like I stumbled upon some type of magic. Like I just had this goal in my mind, and I was like, I'm going to do whatever I can to get there. And like we were talking about before the interview, like there was definitely some delusion and dumbness there, because I just didn't know. It was ignorance. I just said, this is what I want. I saw people doing it, and no one in my school had ever won a state title. We had maybe one or two state placers, or no, not even a state placer. It was the first one. And I just said, I want to go win it. And I started traveling out of town. I started training twice a day. I started doing all the things that I started asking around, doing all the things that I figured a state champion would do. And that carried me through that senior season. And then staying on top of the podium, I was like, wow, I just came up with this thing in my mind, and now I'm here. And that's what really like propelled me into college. And even now, it just gives me that confidence that any of us can just really come up with whatever we want in our mind. And if we could see it in our mind, as cliche as it sounds, we can create it, and we can hold it, and we can manifest it. And so it's a surreal feeling when that first goal happens.
So you wrestle 4 years in high school, you make the state tournament once, you win one state title. So naturally, it's an easy fit. I mean, with those kind of accolades and credentials, you go to Penn State. I mean, right? I mean, a one-time state champion is a perfect fit for Penn State. I'm trying. I mean, because it's funny, and that's what I love about you, because it's such a great story. So, give me the mindset on why Penn State was the place, and ultimately why you said, "Yeah, I'm going to Penn State," and you did.
Sorry. I think once I decided I wanted to be the best that junior season, and I embraced that nickname of Anti-Champ, I didn't know too much about wrestling, but I knew there was a program out there that also was the best, and also, was considered the champs of the team tournament of wrestling. And so I was like, this is where I need to be, because I know that I'm so far behind. I know that I got here just by straight will and a blast double. And so I said, I need to go somewhere that I was gonna be able to make up ground quick. And so, had a lot of other offers from local schools. State in Jersey was tempting, and this and that, but something told me, like, hey, if you're going to achieve this crazy goal, which is even crazier than being a state champ, you need to be at the proven best place in the world.
What do you remember from your first interaction with Cael Sanderson?
I remember that he sat in the back seat. He was like, he had me take the front seat and sat in the back seat. And for me, like, coming in, and being around humility, like I said, with my parents and even my grandparents and just people that I respected, I was like, wow, this guy, from what I'm hearing, is the man. And he's, sitting in the back seat, letting me take the front. And so that was enough just then and there to solidify, like, okay, I know they're the best, but it also seems like we have some good leadership here. And I was the first one in my family to go away to college. So my dad seeing that too, and seeing the moral character of the coaches, that was enough to solidify my choice of going there.
Your redshirt season, right around 500, solid season. What do you remember from that first year in that room?
I remember just having a field day. I was grabbing Varner all the time, McIntosh, Coach Cael, and I was just working hard and going hard with these guys, and they loved it, and I was getting a lot better. And that finally showed leading into the Junior World Team Trials. But I remember that first year, it was kind of frustrating because I felt like I was getting a lot better in the room, and I was getting a lot of good feedback, but it wasn't showing up very much in the matches. And so it kind of needed time to catch up to my competition. And then once that confidence, switched in, that's when it all started coming together.
This sport, it's the best sport in the world, wrestling. But it's not always nice. I mean, this sport will take your heart out and shove it down your throat, and we love it, so we come back for more. We want more of it. You have that redshirt season, and then you have a couple years of injuries. I mean, I can only imagine, Anthony, that had to be a pretty dark place.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I got hurt at the Junior Worlds, and then my master plan was to medal at the Junior Worlds, and then take an Olympic red shirt because I couldn't afford a second year of school.
And you took 8th at Junior Worlds, right?
Yes, I was in the quarterfinals, up 6-0, and the kid from India ripped my shoulder over my head. So whatever I placed after that, probably down to 8th or something. And so my plan was ruined. I told the coaches, hey, I got no more money. I can't go to school this year. And they basically were like, we wish you would have told us earlier. We could have figured something out. But we'll get you a job, you can work, and then we'll give you scholarship the following year. And so I got surgery. I just worked at a local property management company, continued to train and rehab. And then I got hurt again when I came back for the Junior World Team Trials the following year. So it was like 2 years of just not being in school, working, rehabbing, and everyone kind of forgot about me. And then once I was healthy, I came back and started that journey back.
When you think back to those couple years being injured,
Mhm.
is there a day or two when you were at your lowest point that you recall?
I would say after I got hurt the second time, because the first injury, I was like, okay, I have never had an injury before. I'll be fine. I'll get back. And then when I came back almost a year later and hurt it again, that was my lowest point, where I remember calling my dad and just being like, this doesn't make sense. Like what's going on? And he just told me to put my head down, continue to trust in God, and figure it out. And so thankfully I was able to do that. But that was definitely the lowest point, because you come back from an injury, the last thing you want to do is re-injure yourself that fresh, and then that you have another year of, or whatever it is, of pain, surgery, meds, rehab, like the whole 9 yards. It's never fun.
Pretty incredible. You come back, you have a really solid season, of course. Want to take you back to February. I believe it was Super Bowl weekend in 2018, the dual meet of the century. And Colin Moore, right, number one in the country at 197, wrestling Anthony Cassar. I was there. I mean, that dual meet was electric. When you think about that night, what do you reflect on?
Um, it was crazy. It was a crazy whirlwind of a weekend. I got the text the night before, and was just excited to have a second opportunity to show everyone what I was made of. And so I remember running out there, and it was the Jersey Shore soundtrack for my run out, and I was just feeling it. And I was like, I'm just gonna let it fly. Like, as number one kid in the country, I believe I'm the best. Now I get to finally show it on the biggest stage. And it was just surreal after that. Everyone was going crazy. I did every celebration I've ever seen on TV. It was just, yeah, it was the first point where I felt like I showed what I had been working on, and what I had been preparing for, that no one else had seen besides my teammates and coaches. And so that's why the emotion was just so high, because everyone could finally see who I claimed to be.
When I look at you, Anthony, obviously you're put together. You haven't missed too many times in the weight room. And I can't see what your mindset looks like, but your mindset is muscular. I mean, you have a fascinating mind. What I really appreciate about you in this example, and it's in the Big Ten, and it blows me away, it's Division I wrestling. Guys ranked number one. I mean, in high school, a lot of times you're beat by the ranking, right? It's like, oh, I got the number one guy in the state, and you just kind of fold. Or in college, it's like, oh, number one guy, 2-3-time state champion, let's go, and I'm going to beat him. Like, what have you done with your mind over the years where you step to the line against the number one guy in the country, you're coming out of nowhere, you're the backup, you're not even the starter on your own team at that point, and you find a way to get it done? What do you remember toeing the line against Moore? What's going through your mind going, I know I'm going to win this match?
It always comes down to my preparation. I don't think confidence can come just by creating it in your mind. It's what I had done day in and day out that I prepared for, and I was preparing for those kind of matches. I didn't get the opportunity to compete in them the previous 3-4 years, but when I step on that line, all I'm thinking about is resort to your level of training. I'm not gonna, like the Navy SEALs say, I'm not gonna become a new person and rise to the occasion. I'm gonna resort to who I am day in and day out, and that's what gives me confidence. And that's why I knew that if I was going to win or lose, I knew that I was prepared to give my best, and that's why I was just able to be free out there.
And then 5 weeks later, Shakur Rashid gets the nod at the Big Tens. What do you remember from that conversation, getting told the news that they were going to pass on you at that time?
It was really tough. I didn't really believe it. I honestly, leading up to the second that Shakur, and he's one of my best friends to this day, leading up to the second that Shaq put his foot on the line, I thought I was gonna be the guy. I had blind faith that I was gonna be the guy no matter what, and that it was gonna figure itself out. And that was a lesson I learned, that you can't be too faithful, and you have to take responsibility and put into action what you want. And so it was very tough. But the second that match started, I started eating, I started lifting, and my eyes were set on the next goal.
What was it like with Shakur? I know you guys are friends, as you just mentioned, but the best rooms in the country have a little bit of tension. I mean, there's great guys all over the place. It just kind of comes with the territory. How did you navigate that with him at that time?
We chose to just kind of not really acknowledge it. Like we chose to be friendly, train in the room, and not really talk about it. I think you have to deal with it differently depending on the relationship. Like I've had other situations like that where maybe I'm not as close to the guy. So maybe we have a quick conversation about it just to set the standard about how we're going to interact. But Shaq and I were close enough to where it was like, no, it was known, okay, you're now competing at my weight class. We both don't really like it, but we're not going to make it weird. We're still going to, hang out, talk, be cordial, train hard. So I think we did a good job of dealing with it.
So, as you said, you go to heavyweight. Like,
Mhm.
why'd you go to heavyweight?
So I actually told Coach Kale when I was on my recruiting trip, I was going to be a heavyweight. And I just felt like my body was still growing and I love to eat and I love to lift. And so going to that last season at 197, I was like full keto. My body was sucked out. I was really skinny. And so I knew like this was my last year cutting down. And so I knew that right before that match happened, I started bulking and never looked back.
Come back the next season. You're at heavyweights. And we'll talk more about this in a bit. The big moment on the Big Ten Network. Anthony Cassar takes Gable Steveson down twice. It was awesome. Definitely want people to watch that. And it showed, kind of some of the journey of that particular season. Gable Steveson, I mean, phenomenal talent, phenomenal wrestler. You get him in the Big Tens in 2019 in Minneapolis, his home school right there in Williams Arena. What was the most critical aspect of execution that season leading up to postseason and that first meeting with Gable?
A lot went into it. I mean, bulking up correctly through training lab and Coach Cal, that was huge because you see a lot of guys jump up in weight and not perform. So building up my body correctly to where I could still be, that 197-pound Anthony, have my conditioning and intelligence there. And then in terms of the actual wrestling, it was just staying poised with him. Not, he was big on momentum and throwing guys around and then building confidence as the match went on. And so the goal was to disrupt that early, keep it close, and then use my my lightweight power as the match went on.
What did he feel like?
He felt strong. He felt dense. I remember shooting a double that I've scored on everybody with in the first period, and he kind of just threw his hips back, and I was like, okay, all right, this is a match.
And if I recall correctly, in that match, Anthony, you got a late takedown in that match, right?
Yep.
Late takedown, and then you had to ride him out, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I love gritty wrestling. I like guys that score a bunch of points like you guys do at Penn State. That's great. I think sometimes you got to get really tough as well. You got to know how to ride a guy. 30, 40 seconds left. You got to figure out a way to ride a guy. What do you recall from keeping that big man down to get the victory? 30 seconds. That's a tough task.
Yeah, super tough. I remember he got up and he went to go cartwheel over me, and the only way I was able to, I was able to
Yep.
hold with my bad shoulder. I was able to hold him somehow, and it was only because Jake Varner would do that to me in the room a lot, and trying to hold his big body was way harder than Gable. So I was prepared for that, and then as the seconds ran down, I was just like, all right, I got this.
And if I remember right, that's the match where you kind of said, like, settle down, the champ is here. Is that what you said to him?
Yeah, it was the Cristiano Ronaldo's comma celebration. I added a little spin to it.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
You're standing atop the podium in Minneapolis as a Big Ten champion. You remember what from that night? Anything stand out that you'll always remember 30, 40 years down the road?
Yeah, I did an interview with this one guy. He had really good hair. He had a good skin tone, and he was super excited.
He didn't look as red as this. I mean, I'm normally not. I don't know why it looks like this all the time.
No, I do remember that interview though, because I remember watching it back. I said exactly what I was feeling. I said, I work hard. I want this better than anyone else, and I'm more prepared for it than anyone else. So you can't stop me. And standing atop that podium in Big Tens, I just remember feeling that, like, you can't stop me. I know that I'm gonna have to do this again in 2 weeks, but now that I just proved to myself and everyone else that I can do it, there's absolutely no way I won't.
What was the key to getting it done? Because he had to beat Gable again, and then he had to beat Derek White. I believe he beat at the scuffle 1-point match, and ultimately he had to beat him again. I mean, so you had to beat a couple of really, really good guys. And again, Anthony, it's your first time at the tournament. Like, you did not have the experience of being at this tournament before. You're going in for the very first time. It's pretty incredible when you really stop and think you're able to get it done first time there. Looking back on it, what were some things that you really did a good job? What was so key in that whole journey over those few days?
Yeah, I think the term you just used, stop and think, like that's something I never did. And I think that was key for that weekend because, you know, I could have walked in and looked around and been like, wow, this is the NCAAs. Like I've only been there once in my life to watch it, and that was my freshman year. And so I could have really like let that moment get to me and second guess myself, but I never stopped and thought. I said, this is what I want. This is what I've said I wanted for 5 years, and I'm going to go out and get it. And first couple matches went well. Semis with Gable was crazy. But like I said, I just feel like it was a testament to what I had done every single day leading up to it, because I remember being tired in the first period and it was crazy. He was pushing me around the mat and it was kind of chaos. But my muscle memory just snapped in and I was able to be the man that I was every day in training, every competition, every second of the day, the thoughts that I kept, all those little things just really showed up in that big moment and then carried through to the national finals where I felt like I was the better competitor and I just needed to make some few adjustments to win that final match.
Between the wrestling and now MMA, I mean, I think the cage is a totally different animal. I mean, you make that walk, you go in the octagon, they lock the door. I mean, somebody's across the way looking to physically hurt you. Yeah. How do you deal with nerves? And then I would ask you this, Anthony, to expand on that. How has that approach changed as you mature and get the more experience?
Yeah, I think it feels similar to a big match. You know, it feels similar to a Big Ten final or national championship final, but the stakes are definitely higher. And as I'm growing as a man and as a competitor, I just see it for what it is. You know, I continue to trust my training, like I've been saying, my preparation's on point. And then I just have faith in God. You know, as I've been more removed from the sport of wrestling, and you know, I'm choosing to do this new craft of MMA. And you know, I'm married now, and there's just other things going on in life to where I can have like a bigger, more eternal, greater perspective of things. And so I'm even more at peace to go out there, and I'm going to give my best. I'm going to go out to dominate, but at the end of the day, I know God has my back, and I can only control so much.
Yeah, he's never let me down.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Got to ask you this, Anthony. Your Big Ten wall chart and your NCAA championship wall chart, where do you keep those?
It's a great question. I think they're in my dad's attic.
I always say if I had one of those things, it'd be like in the living room. It'd be like the first thing that you saw. Like, oh gosh, I forgot that. I didn't even realize that was there.
Yeah.
You know? Man, okay.
I got it in here. I remember.
What is the most impactful conversation you've ever had with Cael Sanderson?
That's a great question. I mean, he has impactful conversations with us every day before practice, but there's one that comes to mind, and it was the moment after I won NCAAs, and we were both in the bathroom, actually at the urinal, and I remember him just nudging my elbow and going, "See what happens when you do all the little things right." And it just meant a lot to me because we had conversations about really dialing in all the details. You know, 2 or 3 years prior, I wasn't doing all the little things right, and I was going out and partying. I wasn't eating correctly. I wasn't sleeping right. I was training hard, but outside of that, it wasn't tailored into becoming an NCAA champion. And so that was something that I had conversations with him. And one day in 2017, after I had kind of a revelation, I decided to commit to what he was telling me to do. And in less than 2 years, I had achieved my goal. And so that statement from him and that little banter we had was kind of confirmation. Like, you did it, you trusted us, you bought in, and look what happened.
Such an amazing coaching staff there. Who did you work closest with? Was it Varner at that time?
Yeah, Varner and I trained almost every day. I would say Varner and Coach Cael in terms of training. But I was always talking to Coach Casey, Coach Cody. They all just have such different perspectives. And so I tried to soak as much as I could and still do from all of them.
What do you appreciate most about Jacob Varner?
I would say his loyalty. I got there in 2014. He was still competing. And I remember growing up, I didn't really have any wrestler that I wanted to be like. But when I saw this dude with freaking monster traps and just like looked so mean, but actually was a nice dude and would just throw people around, I was like, I wouldn't mind wrestling like this dude. And he's just been super loyal ever since I got there in 2014. 10 years later, we still train together. He still got my back, and he really, like, having him in my corner really gave me peace. Like, if this turns into a street fight, I'm good. So I always loved having him in my corner, but his loyalty is what I appreciate the most about him.
What makes Casey Cunningham so special?
I mean, his selflessness, his dedication to the athletes, his faith, his perspective. He's a guy that reminded me the most of my father. So when I got there and started having conversations with him, and the way he was talking and just being straight up with you and looking you in the eye and telling you what you need to hear, and always ready to give advice on life, wrestling, relationship, whatever it was, he was a dude that I really saw take over some of that father figure role as I was away from home.
And how about Cody? Give us a story on him that stands out.
Cody's just that unique, positive, supportive dude that you want around when things are going down. So he was always the one like warming me up right before I went out for the biggest matches. And I remember before the I think it was before the semis with Gable at NCAAs. I was listening to my headphones and he like lifted him up and listened to it. He's like, "Is that Beyonce?" And I was like, "Yeah." Nothing like
You had
nothing,
Beyonce in?
yeah, I was like, nothing like a little bit of the Queen to help you get warmed up. And he was just laughing. And so he was always that dude for me that I knew he understood what I was feeling. And he was a man of few words to me, but the words that he said to me and the looks that he gave me and the feel, like I just felt like we always connected on that deeper level that he didn't need to do much.
When you wrestled for the national title, that was in 2019 in Pittsburgh. What song did you take the mat to?
So my run out song was supposed to be "The Champ Is Here" by Jadakiss. And they somehow they didn't go with it. And I wrote down a backup was just a random one. And I ended up going with that because I just watched the Queen movie, Bohemian Rhapsody. And the "We Will Rock You" scene was sick when they did it in the stadium. And so I wrote that down as a backup and they ended up using that. So it was fine, but I really wanted my original.
What do you walk to the cage? What music?
It's called "Lion" by Saint Mesa. It kind of starts out with like monks humming. It's kind of like eerie and cool, and then it breaks down. It says like "Bring the lion out," and it has like a cool breakdown. So that's my current one.
What's the last concert you've been to?
I've only been to 2 concerts in my life. The last one I've been to was a Blink-182 Lil Wayne combo.
You saw Lil Wayne?
Yep. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Who was the first concert you ever went to?
It's a guy named John Bellion. He came to State College. He's a great one. He's low key, but he's really good.
Go Earn It podcast here with the Champ. Couple more questions for you. What loss did you learn the most from in your career?
What loss did I learn the most from? It's a good question. I would say probably in high school, it was that last one, my junior season. Because I remember just feeling underprepared, but I can see the future of what my preparation could lead me to. So that was the biggest one in high school. In college, I don't know, the Derek White one was big my senior year, losing to Shakur. Each one just had like so many lessons. I never dwelled on them long, but I always took 3 or 4 major lessons out of them. And I always say like those could have been regrets, but I choose to use them as lessons to lead me to what I actually want. And so now I look back at them fondly because without them, I wouldn't have been able to achieve my goal.
At the time, what's the most painful loss that you ever suffered?
Um, probably, probably about high school, sophomore year. I got pinned in like 10 seconds in front of my whole family. I just remember being like, nah, nah, I don't ever want to feel this again. That was tough.
What makes you tick?
What makes me tick? I would say growth, improvement. Like I said, mind, body, and spirit. Trying to grow closer to God, grow as a man, grow in my relationships, grow as a competitor. If I'm improving in life, then I'm usually at peace.
You've given us so many great examples. I've kind of asked this before, but I'm going to ask it again. You've had your back against the wall a few times. I mean, you've had a lot of adversity. When I think about you, I love the letter P in the sport of wrestling. Preparation, physicality, call goes wrong, your poise, but perseverance. I mean, you look up, if college wrestling had a book and it had perseverance, it's probably going to be a picture of you. What would you describe, Anthony, as your go earn it moment? Just a time in your life where you had to go earn it at a level that you didn't maybe even realize you had.
It's a great line. Go earn it. I would say it had to have been that second match with Gable. Because, first one, maybe it's a fluke. Coming in, he's confident. And I know, I felt confident in my rematch with Derek White. Not that it was in the bag or anything, but I looked at that semis as I got to go freaking earn it. And I got to prove that I am who I say I am. And that's when I felt it the most.
That's awesome. Tell us something, Anthony, that most people do not know about you.
Well, you found out I'm from a big family.
Yeah, I did
Uh,
not know that. 1 of 7. Good to know.
yeah, yeah. People always ask me that. I always struggle to answer because I'm a pretty simple dude. I live a very disciplined life. I'm very focused, and I would say I discovered a passion in fun fact in real estate and real estate investing during COVID, and so that's another passion of mine that I really like to pursue when I have the time.
What's the biggest threat to your excellence?
Ooh. Biggest threat to my excellence is becoming civilized. Just losing that dog, and I think that comes from being satisfied or from stepping away from the grind. And I felt that in times when I've been injured and couldn't do what I loved, or been down and out, and been upset about the result of something. And so I think becoming civilized, like they say in the Rocky movie, is the biggest threat to a champion and a man who wants to achieve great things, because I think we need to continually be and foster that savage in us and do hard and uncomfortable things, and then be able to control that and use it for good.
I've done plenty of these interviews, Anthony. You got the hair on my arm standing up. That is after when I talk about Anthony Cassar in 30 years, that's what I'm going to.
Thank you.
Becoming civilized. You got to keep the dog and you got to keep the savage in you. That was freaking awesome. That answer was great. Want to talk about the big moment? It was on Big Ten Network. Anthony Cassar takes down Gable Steveson twice. Great story on your career leading up to winning that national title in 2019. How did that come about?
Yeah, so the Big Ten reached out maybe 6 months ago, a little more, and said, "Hey, like we want to do this little mini doc on you, your matches with Gable, this and that." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds cool." Like, so it kind of like went off from there, and then they kept reaching out, and I was like, "Yeah, I mean, if you do it like more about my story and my senior year, I don't want it just to be about Gable. Like that's everyone knows about those matches. He went on to do his thing. I'm doing my thing. Let's not dwell on that." And so they said, "Yeah, we can do it more on your story." And it built up from there. They interviewed myself, my wife, my dad. Then once they started getting that, I was like, I knew it was going to be good content because you start getting those deeper perspectives from my loved ones, and I knew it was going to do really well. And so I was really happy with the way it turned out. I got a lot of good feedback, a lot of people asking for more. And so I was grateful that they saw enough of my story to put it out there.
What was your favorite part of being part of the process?
Um, but I would say the family and friends, like I said,
Anthony, we
that
lost
adds
you
a
there.
whole new
We lost
dynamic.
you there for about 10 seconds. I lost you for about
Sorry.
10 seconds. So if you just want to start that answer over, what was your favorite part of the process?
My favorite part of the process was probably having my close family and friends involved because, you know, I tell my story a lot. I've done a lot of interviews like that, but hearing the perspective of my loved ones that you don't hear very often. You don't usually sit down and say, talk to me for an hour about what this was like for you. And so having them involved in it was really cool. And then obviously seeing it on the screen and seeing it all come together, and my dad being super involved in it, and my wife, and Mark Hall's perspective, it was pretty surreal because there was moments in my career when they were very tough, and I was seeing that vision of me becoming a champion, that I saw myself, you know, having a mini documentary or a full documentary, and you know, if I can do this story is going to be crazy. And so sitting there and watching it was really surreal.
When you went back and watched it, what part hit you up in the feels the most?
The whole freaking thing. But there was a moment when there's a couple moments with my dad that really got me because you know, he was obviously my biggest role model growing up, and I always wanted to be like him, and I always want to make him proud. And he took a gamble on me, like you see in the documentary, my freshman year going to Penn State. I had a full ride offer and a couple ones to some Jersey schools and other schools around the country, and I passed it up for this chance at Penn State, and he took a huge risk on that. And so there's a couple moments when he was like, all right, you want it, go out and do it. And so those really got me because it's very satisfying to see it all come together after someone believes in you when there was no reason to.
Why do you and Bo Nickel click? And what's your first memory of meeting him?
I think we clicked because we got the same savage mindset. We both want to win wholeheartedly, and more than that, our life reflects that. And so I think that's why we click, is our discipline and our mentality, and also our devotion to trying to be good people and have high moral character. And so I think those are important things that unite us and make us very similar. And my first memory of him was so like I said, I wasn't in the wrestling world in high school, so I thought my roommate was going to be Bo Jordan. Um, I just I Coach Kale texted me and said your roommate's Bo, and I only knew one Bo.
That's a great story.
I heard Bo Jordan when I was in high school, and so I was like, oh, I heard this kid was really good. So I walked into the dorm room, and there was some ginger kid sitting on the bed, and I was like, "What's up, Bo?" And he's like, "What's up, I'm Bo Nickel?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, this is a different kid." And I remember we started getting close after that. Started scrapping a bunch in the room, and I remember him and Noel, like a few weeks into classes, were arguing about who was going to win the Hodge Trophy, and I was like, "What the hell is a Hodge Trophy?" So,
It was that competitive right out of the gate with that group.
yeah, super competitive. We had him, we had Neville's, we had Shakur, we had like six other kids that were in the class. So the class was stacked, and it was just super competitive, and ended up becoming super close. So it was awesome.
I like that part of the documentary. It was about Flow Wrestling announcing that class, and you were just glad that it was like on the bottom, like like a couple throw-ins are this guy, and Anthony Cassar.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, they got my name.
This has been a ton of fun. It's been a good scrap. We got about, it's late in this thing. We're about 30 seconds, same deal. I'm in the top position. I'm up by one. And now you know what's coming. It's going to be Matt return, finishing this period on top, finding some grit and some toughness to knock off a guy like you. So this is going to go some rapid fire. Matt returns.
Okay.
Your favorite musical group?
Imagine Dragons.
Favorite Italian dish?
Ooh, mussels in the red sauce.
If you could meet anybody, dead or alive, and spend a day with them, somebody you've never met before, who would you pick?
I got to go with Jesus Christ.
Biggest pet peeve?
I don't really have pet peeves. Being okay with mediocrity.
I'm going to go back. You get to meet Jesus Christ. You get to ask him one question. What's your question?
I would say, why are we here?
If you could change one thing about yourself, Anthony, what would it be?
Nothing.
What's your first job?
Working for my dad and my grandpa, landscaping, construction, manual labor.
You got a favorite sports team?
No, I don't really watch sports too much.
Really? You're not a sports guy?
No. I like individuals. I like watching Brady. I like LeBron. I like watching the greats.
Who's the toughest teammate? Just pure toughness. The toughest teammate you ever had?
Zane.
You know what? I thought that's who I was going to guess. I'm like, I bet it's Zane Rutherford.
Yeah.
Zane Rutherford looks like the nicest guy. He is the nicest guy. It blows my mind how a guy like Zane Rutherford can be so nice and then flip a switch. And if killing you is required, that's what's going to happen.
Crazy.
That's a savage right there.
Yeah, he definitely is.
I love this question. I think I got this from Kyle Dake's Instagram. I stole it. All my good stuff is stolen. Okay. If you could relive one day of your life, what day would it be?
Ooh.
It's a great question. That'll make you think.
Yeah, that's a great question. Aside from my wedding day.
Sure, you got to throw that one in there. You know what? You just taught me something. When I rephrase that question to married guys, that's what the question is. Aside from your wedding, because of course that's the best.
I would say it had to have been March of 2019, winning that national title. Yeah, it just culmination of 5 years being with my family, friends, coaches. Yeah, that's got to be the best one so far.
A guy, teammate, or competitor that you just hated to wrestle. Like you know, we all got those guys. You know, you can beat them, but it's like, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to go to hell and back 3 times, get my arm raised. I know I can do it, but I hate wrestling this guy.
Yeah. Who did I hate wrestling? I didn't like wrestling Varner at all. He would tickle you, he would bite you, he would freaking be super hard to score. And I think it took like 100 matches before I scored my first takedown. So it was a love-hate with him. I never like wanted to, but I also really loved it.
Last question for you, Anthony. What is the number one thing on your bucket list? What's the number one thing you want to do?
I want to become the best in the world at my craft. That's the next goal. You know, I achieved the state title, national title. Now I want to become the best in the world. And it's not just for me. The previous goals maybe were more selfish, but now I want to create something that is bigger than me and ultimately leads others to God and inspires them to become the best versions of themselves. And all the things that I care about and all of my personal goals, I feel like can be reflected through that one goal of becoming the best in the world at whatever I do.
When will we see you in the octagon next?
Planning for mid to late March. I just need someone to sign the contract.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, this has been really awesome. Just really appreciate your story. You're an awesome guy. And thank you so much for the time. This has been a lot of fun. Appreciate you.
Of course. Always enjoy talking to you, Shane. So thanks for having me on.